as human beings, and also then talk about the role that we can play in starting to bridging and connecting us. I talk about being human beings because it's important to know first that we're all human. And as human beings, we are wired biologically for certain characteristics. Our brains are wired. We are developed over time to make sure that we could be safe. And part of being safe is our brains protecting us. We long to belong, right? We look for connections with people. But sometimes our brains are really particular about how we do this. And so we look for people who are similar to us. We look for, if you would, our tribes, as Jean mentioned. And what's important to know about that is our brains actually can prevent us from making connections with people who are different from us. And so I bring this up because it's often a common underlying issue with conflict. We look for what's right, for our version of truth. And that truth is our understanding, our own individual sense, as well as people who are just like us, right? We look for things that we know are right, that it's the only way possible. And what's interesting is as we think about what's true in the world, there's often a sense of the big T, right? Things like we live on Earth, the world is round, today is Saturday. Those are big truths that are pretty hard to dispute. But even on a Saturday in where I'm at in Washington State, our interpretation of truth, right? The sun is out. To me, that might be beautiful. That is my version of the truth, right? To someone else experiencing the very same thing, they might hate the sun. And so their truth might be very different than mine. What's important to recognize in that is the same event, the same situation can have very different experiences for different people. And so our brains tend to focus on the differences instead of looking for the similarities, which is often then the cause of conflict. And we come at the same thing with very different perspectives. Unfortunately, we don't grow up with a lot of tools on how to deal with this. We're not taught often for deeper tools and deeper ways of looking and talking constructively and respectfully about the truth. And that's really what we hope to do. Unfortunately, whatever our truth is, when we are bombarded every day by messages, by people, by experiences that tell us we shouldn't trust other people. The news, social media, people we talk with, signs we see all over, these drivers of discord and distrust, where we're told that we shouldn't trust people who are different from us. We shouldn't listen to different points of view. And that makes it really hard for us to look for commonalities. So we really have to understand just, okay, take a step back. This is the world we live in. How do we want to emerge and be part of that? Braver Angels started in November of 2016 by two friends, one who was very conservative and one who was very liberal. And the day after the presidential election, they were on the phone talking to each other and discovered that they had very different truths of the same event. And as they looked around their communities, one was in a rural area, one was in a urban situation, they were talking about the differences that they saw looking out their window. And one said, wow, my community is so excited. They're so hopeful about the change that's going to happen as a result of this presidential campaign. And the other one said, wow, that is not what's happening here. It looks like a bomb went off. People are depressed, they're sad, there's doom and gloom over what this means for our country. And as these two friends talked, coming at it from very different experiences, they were very worried and concerned about what this meant for our nation. A nation that has a very common grounding, we're all citizens, we're all part of the same nation. But again, those two truths were so different. And they were very concerned about what that meant for us and how that could separate us as a nation. They decided to do something about it and worked with a professor of family social science at the University of Minnesota to take action. And that was really the founding of Braver Angels. By December of 2016, they had created, between the three of them, a workshop that I'll talk a little bit more about that helped provide the foundation for Braver Angels? And how do we start looking for ways to connect us instead of dividing us? As they talked through what that foundation was, they were very inspired by another time and place of our nation where there was a deep divide. And they looked at this quote from President Lincoln about how do we look for connection? We may be enemies at this point in time, but we're also friends. We may be looking at very different points of view around the same situation, but we're still one nation. And how do we look for those ways to be better versions of ourselves, to be better versions of a country, and really look for ways that we can come together? So this quote about being better angels of ourselves became Braver Angels. Braver Angels today is a national citizens movement that's really about reducing polarization. We do focus, of course, on the United States, but you can certainly see where this connects to other places in the world that are also experiencing polarization and discord. We look to connect liberals, conservatives, people with different points of view, opposite ends of the spectrum, and look for ways that we can go beyond the stereotypes, beyond those drivers of discord, to start forming more unity, to teach the practical skills to listen, and to help make the argument for less political polarization across our country. The foundations or the pillars, I think, are really important for Braver Angels to be successful. One is we try to be very grounded. All of the efforts we do, all of the workshops are grounded in skills that are proven to work in things like family therapy. Now, you may be wondering, like, what in the world does this have to do with family therapy? It's fascinating because if you think of families that are going through trouble, right? They may have really deep issues. Sometimes they may want to kill each other, right? There may be some frustration, some event that happens where everybody's so frustrated. But at the end of the day, you can't, or you shouldn't, get rid of your family members, right? We still have to come back together and love each other over the dinner table. We still want to come back at holidays and celebrate and be there for each other. And that's really what we think about with Braver Angels in the country, right? We may have very strong feelings, be very passionate, and just really want to come out the other side. But just like families, we're still part of a country together. We still want to have that unity. And so it's really important to make sure that we are grounded in things that work. And all of our workshops, all of our efforts go through a deep process, very thorough process to make sure that those things will work and help support our efforts. We also want to be balanced. We always make sure at every level of our structure, at every workshop, that we're trying to represent red and blue equally, because this is about unity. It's about how do we come together to serve everyone. And this isn't always easy, but it's a really important concept to make sure that everyone can be heard and that we're listening to different points of view from very top levels of the organization to the workshops and making sure that there's balanced representation. I also love this concept of patriotic empathy. Our love for our country is shown by our love and respect for our fellow citizens. We are human beings first, and that is a really important part of how we show our patriotism, that we love each other, not just the flag, not just America, but each other and human beings in that situation. The goal of Braver Angels and any conflict and relationship is not about proving that we're right. It's about letting go of that and trying to find understanding, trying to bridge with each other. I will admit that I am not always good at this. I'm a very competitive person. I'm very achievement driven. And one of the reasons that I got involved with Braver Angels is as I was going through some personal journeys and trying to be a better human being, I realized that I'd let some of my very strong opinions get in the way of family relationships, to the point where I had a family relationship breakdown several years ago over differences of politics. It was heartbreaking, and I was very sad, and I was also very angry. I wanted to be right. I wanted every conversation to be able to share my point of view, to share my data, to make sure I was right in this relationship. And I let go I'd forgotten, right, that the relationship, the person behind that was more important to me than being right. So Braver Angels really helped me see that by listening, by bridging, by trying to understand first, that actually is more constructive to a relationship than trying to be right. Braver Angels has developed a number of tools and resources to help us do that. The bread and butter is really our workshops. And so I mentioned in December of 2016, the very first workshop, the very first tool event that happened was a red-blue workshop. And that really has become the foundation of what we do. It's an all-day workshop where equal numbers of reds and blues come together. And it's about listening and understanding both who we are in our respective groups, as well as trying to bridge and understand what might be happening on the other side. We do that through a number of ways. Some of that is confronting some of the stereotypes about our own side. If I'm a blue, looking at what the truth might be about what those stereotypes are, it's really uncomfortable. It's hard, but it's also a really important step in understanding how the other side might be perceiving me. And how do I want to be perceived? What's important to me in that? And how do I start breaking some of that down? And then sharing with each other. Here's how I got here. Here's what's important to me. Here's what my values are as a human being. And start opening up the opportunity to look for shared values, not just the ones that divide us. Over time, Braver Angels has developed a number of other workshops that people have said are really important to them. Things like building skills. We've had a recent one emerge from about families and politics, which I wish I would have had years ago. And one of the ones I really encourage people to take up is the depolarizing within. If you think about our tendency as a human being to just keep talking to people just like us, having the skills and understanding of breaking that down within our bubble is really important, because the more that we're talking within each other and growing that anger and discord and distrust, that's not very constructive to then being able to listen and bridge with the other side. So there's some really amazing workshops that Braver Angels has developed to help us have the tools to listen, to understand, and to connect as human beings first. Our structure is really a national and local construct. So at the national level, they develop the workshops, they develop the tools, the communication to help us understand how to take that locally. And just like I'm the Washington State Coordinator, there's a Western Washington Alliance and an Eastern Washington Alliance. Some places there's city type organizations at the local level. Some are statewide, depending on what's needed. The reason this is so important is if you think about the construct, right? All politics is local. It's really important to be able to have that freedom to talk about what's important happening in our community. The Western Washington Alliance had a number of workshops and debates around homelessness, around politics that are really important to us at a local level. How do we think about manufacturing jobs going away and transitioning into new types of economies? It's fascinating as we talk about what's important to people locally, how that can be so different than at the national level, and often very similar. But to be able to have the voices and local dialogue is really critical to our success. As we've grown over the last year, especially, Zoom has been actually a really helpful tool for us to open up dialogue in new ways. So we've been able to have national debates, national conversations, national discussions around things like films, books, issues that are coming up at a national level for us that are really interesting. And Zoom, just like we have people here from all over the country, has helped us connect with people across the nation that otherwise we'd never meet. One of the ways we do that is our one-on-one conversations. And so this is a really helpful relationship opener where you can sign up to have a conversation with one person somewhere else in the country on the opposite spectrum of you. And that opposite can be red and blue, it can be urban rural, it can also be black and white. And it's amazing when you have a conversation with someone opposite of you, how much you can find a commonality. I did one recently with a gentleman in Texas who's very red. And I will admit, I went in with all sorts of stereotypes about a red Texan and what he would care about. We had some amazing connections. We both had worked in technology. We both were very passionate about helping our kids succeed in life. And we both had some really interesting connections into what I would call some very liberal groups. He came at it from a very different perspective, and I came at it from my perspective. But we were able to share our experiences in a way that built trust and connection and just understanding. He didn't change my point of view, I didn't change his, but we had some commonalities and we had some ways that we could look at things with respect and admiration for each other that was really healthy. So there's some really interesting tools and ways that we can connect with one another that really help. Whatever the conversation, whatever the structure of the workshop, we always provide some guidance to our participants about what to do and what not to do. As you can imagine, things like the golden rule, right? Treat people with respect. Treat people with good intent. Assume that we're all coming in this to learn, to grow, and to open up our thinking is really important. Genuine curiosity and authenticity is also really important. We're trying to understand the other person. And that means sometimes we talk less and listen more, which is very hard for many of us, right? We want to share our points of view. The interesting thing about Braver Angels is we're not trying to convince someone of our point of view. And we're also not trying to mask where we come from. We are never asking people not to talk or not to share their point of view, not to stand up for what they believe. But it's learning how to do that with respect and curiosity and understanding with each other, not trying to convince each other or ourselves of something different. For me, the biggest challenge is letting go of that persuasion, right? I'm really fact-based. I'm very passionate about what I believe. And I hope that's one of my strengths. But I also have learned to appreciate how much it's important to listen to what might be happening for somebody else. Just understanding and appreciating that they're coming at something with their own experiences, their own life, their own development is really important. And so we always ask conversations to start with that openness, that both parties are coming at it to learn and to grow together. That also means that sometimes conversations are inappropriate, right? In a family situation, for example, you can think of sometimes it's just not going to happen where two people can have a constructive relationship. So we're just all learning and asking our participants along the way, start with, can we both be open with this conversation? If you think about the dial that we're trying to move in our workshops, especially, it's often, as you think about those drivers of discord and trust that I talked about at the beginning, right? The other side is bad. The other side is evil. The other side is incompetent or ignorant, right? These are things we hear all the time. And unfortunately, that prevents us from listening to what might be possible with others. So the goal of our workshop is to move from the left, right, of enemies to the right, where understanding that everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has something that they might be able to share, and we want to value that. And so the workshops are very structured in both our emotions and our tools that we can develop and help people move from the left of being enemies to the right of understanding that people have contributions to make. Even if I disagree with a lot of what they have to say, there might be something that I could learn and listen to on that. Whoops. And above all, we're trying to reduce the biases, fear, and fixed positions that people come in with. And hopefully we can start shifting the dialogue of our country to something in a much more respect and understanding as a country. So we're going to break out into some small groups and facilitate some discussion here. There's 3 questions that I invite you to discuss in your breakout rooms. And again, the foundational rule here is openness and listening, not judgment, learning. So we're really trying to look and listen to each other about what shapes our who we are and what shapes our political views. So what's one thing, share with your group, what's one thing that's impacted your political views? The second question is, how have your political views changed over time and why? Was there an event? Was there a relationship? Did something happen in your own personal development that shifted that? And then the third thing that I invite you to share is, what's one thing that you would want someone on the opposite spectrum of you to know about you? One thing. So we're going to break out into groups. And Tom, can you remind me, or David, how long the breakout rooms are?
So we have 35 people. So I've set up 7 breakout rooms. And
Okay.
yeah, according to the agenda, we're back for question answer at 10:15. So
Okay.
I think you can decide here. You have plenty of time. How much time would you like people to talk about this before coming back?
Yeah, I think probably half hour would be great, 30 minutes. And then maybe a 5-minute break. So maybe let's come back at 10:05 and we'll come back into the big room and just talk about what we learned.
Okay.
Okay.